Centers are a big deal in preschool. As you've been reading in your text, centers are one of the main ways that preschoolers learn by doing. It's a great way to have a constructivist environment in preschool. And so we're going to be creating a centers portfolio during this class. And so you're going to be creating 11 different centers for assignments, and you'll turn in a few every week. And then at the end of this class, you will turn in all 11 centers and reflections on those centers. And so right now I want to just walk you through the process of how do you create a centers lesson plan. And so instead of having you just come up with it from scratch, I'm actually going to provide a template for you guys, and it looks just like this. And so it's a blank template where you enter things into these different fields to create the lesson plan. Now you might be wondering what a lesson plan is. A lesson plan is simply that. It's a plan to help you decide how things are going to happen in your lesson, what's the point of your lesson, what are you going to do during your lesson, how are you going to assess that your lesson was a success. And so I want to walk you guys through how to write a lesson plan for a center. And as you check out your reading for this week, which is chapters 3 and 4, you're going to learn about block centers and about dramatic play centers. And so your assignment for this week is to create 2 centers with these lesson plan templates. You're going to create a block center and you're going to create a dramatic play center. And so right now I want to walk you through an example of a block center lesson plan, and then I'm going to walk you through how I created that lesson plan. So here is a lesson plan on bridge building. Now, last week you learned about GELD standards, and we want every lesson that we do to be intentional, and we want it to apply to the standards that we're required to teach our students. And so for the purposes of this class, the standards that we're going to be using are the GELD standards, which is what the state of Georgia uses. And so what we're going to do right now is we're going to first talk about the title. So the title of my center is Bridge Building, and if you look down here at activities, you'll see that I got this idea because a student asked a question about bridge building built in the town. Now, I know that you're not all working in a school, and so you're not able to hear the opinions and thoughts of students, but we want our centers to be based on the interest of students. So for the sake of this assignment, you can come up with an interest that a student might have and use that to base your activities, your centers. And so I actually got this idea from our textbook, and so I want to encourage you to come up with something unique and original, but for the purposes of this, I've used a textbook example so that you can refer back to it as you're creating your centers, so that you if you need a little assistance, you can read that. And down here I've listed that this idea came from pages 335 to 338 in your text, so you can look for an in-depth look at the bridge building center on those pages. So back to the top. So in this classroom, a student asked the teacher a question about a bridge that was being built in their town. And so the teacher decided that because of that interest in bridges, that she would create a block center based on bridge building. So I've named this center Bridge Building. And so then I started thinking through what kind of standards would bridge building apply to. And so I went to the GELD's website, and you got to watch webinars about this last week and interact with this. And so GELDs are the standards that we're using for our preschoolers. And so there are 5 domains. And so what I did was I read through each of these 5 domains to figure out which of these standards applies to the students. And so I want you to know that you need to choose 2 standards to go with each of your center plans. And so just for time's sake, I'm just going to show you how I found one of them. So I was looking at cognitive development, and I was thinking, okay, this is about bridge building, and that's our community, so that's social studies. And then under social studies, you want to make sure that you're reading through these. So I said, okay, here's one right here that says the child will demonstrate an awareness of geography in his or her community. So I thought, a bridge, that can be geography. So I clicked on that, and I looked under 48 to 60 months, which is 4-year-olds, so preschoolers, and I saw 2 options. 1, creates simple representations of home, school, and community, and 2, identifies and describes aspects of his or her community. And block building, bridges that are in the community, is creating simple representations of home, school, and community. So I clicked on that, and I saw that some examples of this. We're building a model of a home or school using blocks, and that's hit the nail on the head. So I chose to use that standard. So I just copied it, and then I went back to my template and I pasted it in right there. Create simple representations of home, school, and community. And I also found another one. Demonstrates eagerness to learn about and discuss new topics, ideas, and tasks. So this idea for the Bridge Building Center came from a student who was interested in learning about bridge building, and so this was an eagerness to learn about something, and so that's where this came from. So there's 2 ways to do this. Because we're writing and we're not in a classroom, we're writing from scratch, we're not in a classroom, we can kind of choose the standards that we want to use. But typically, when you're in the classroom, you're assigned which standards to teach on, and so you have to figure out how to fit your activities with the standards that are for that week or that unit or whatever that time frame in the school. So once you've picked your 2 standards that you're going to hit, then you click your content area, and you might notice there's a star here. So if you scroll to the bottom, you'll notice that that star applies to content areas, or the 11 categories for the Centers portfolio. So this week you'll learn about your Centers portfolio if you haven't already, and there are 11 chapters in our book devoted to specific centers. And so what you're going to do for this class is you're going to write 1 center lesson plan for each of those 11 topics. And so what you need to do in that content area part is tell me which of those topics this center is for. And so in this case, it's the block center, and so you put block in right here in the content area. And then the next one is developmental milestones highlighted. So you see there's 2 stars, so we scroll to the bottom and this describes what's going to go in here. So developmental milestones include any physical, social, emotional, behavioral, spiritual, or cognitive skills that students may use or practice during an activity. So when you're trying to figure this out, you think to yourself, okay, during this activity, which skills of a preschooler are highlighted in this activity? Are they physical skills like gross motor skills? Are they social skills like parallel play? In your textbook, in the chapter devoted to block centers, describes how blocks can be used for each of these categories. So you can use that for assistance as you figure this out. But also, it might work best when you're doing this to work backwards a little. You might want to plan the activity first before you decide which developmental milestones are being hit. So we'll come back to this at the end. And next I decided, okay, what activities are we going to do? So based on what I read in the textbook, I know that there are different things that need to be involved in a block center. So the student asked the question about a bridge being built in town, so the teacher decides that we're going to have a block center for bridge building. And here are the things that we're going to have in our center. And as you've been learning through the text, we want centers to be mostly student-led, and so we want to give them the freedom to do whatever they want in that block center, but we want to give them some guidance. And so here's some ways you can give students guidance in a block center without taking away that freedom. You can add pictures of bridges around the center. You can take pictures of the kids' bridges that they create and post them in the center as well. You can read a book to a child. So if you have kids who seem to be on the outside, not really sure about how to interact, you can read them a book about bridges. And so here's an example of a book called Building a Bridge that you can read to students. Also, you can provide further materials that will help the kids in their creativity, like laying a piece of blue butcher paper on the floor as a pretend river, so children are challenged to build a bridge over the water. And then also you can provide a variety of construction worker figurines and toys, because construction workers build the bridges. And then also you can plan a field trip to actually see the local building site of that bridge. And so those are different activities that I thought of that could be a part of the block center. And then I thought through, okay, what materials are we going to need for this? We're going to need classroom blocks. We're going to need pictures of the bridges. We're going to need that book. We're going to need a camera and a printer to take pictures of the students' bridges to post those. We'll need blue butcher paper. We'll need construction worker figurines and toys. And so you'll just list here all the materials that you'll need for that center. The next section is location that is ideal for the center. You want to place the block center near the dramatic play center. And I got this information from the first chapter of our textbook. It highlights how to arrange the classroom, and it talks about how it's really important to put a block center near dramatic play center, because often in the preschool classroom you want things to be based on a theme, and so all the centers might have an overarching theme. So for example, the theme for this week could be construction, and so in the block center we're constructing bridges, and the dramatic play center they could be playing with construction hats and hammers and different things. And so we want to place them next to each other so that creativity can flow from building to being the people that would build, the construction workers. And so you see that here as the location that's ideal for the center. And so through the textbook and the different things you're learning, you can choose where you think you should put your block center. The next part is assessment, and I chose to use the 3M observation method, which you guys learned about last week, and it's also highlighted throughout the block chapter to observe the students in the block center. And I'm going to record observations about each child on the child interaction form. In this form, you learned about it last week, and it's also included in the block center chapter. For differentiation, this talks about, okay, how can we change up the block center to work best for children that have cultural differences, for children with special needs, or children with behavioral issues. So here are some ideas that I came up with. One is, if I notice a student who's not sure how to interact with the blocks to build a bridge, I could model for them how to build a bridge, and that might give them the confidence that they need to interact with the blocks themselves. Also, I could read more books about blocks or bridges. Maybe these books could be books about bridges in other countries, or even if you have students in your classroom that speak Spanish as their first language, you could even invite a guest in to read a bridge book in Spanish to them, and that might give them the confidence they need to interact with the bridge building. And another idea I had is, let's say that we have some kids that have built a bridge and now they're kind of antsy and, knocking each other's bridges over. Maybe they're throwing things at each other. Instead of just getting onto them, I could redirect their improper behavior by prompting them to add something else to their bridge. I could say things like, "Hey, Johnny, that bridge looks awesome. What else could you add to that bridge?" And so I'll redirect Johnny to do something else productive so that he's participating and not distracted by doing negative things. And there's one more part to this, and that's faith integration. And because I had so much information up here, it scooted this off the page, but this is a part of that first page of the template. And so we want to think about every single activity that we do. How can we integrate faith into this activity? Now, depending on where you're teaching, you may be able to openly talk about your faith and openly talk about the Bible. And maybe if you're in a public school, you can't do that. So there's different things that you can come up with. And so this faith integration idea that I came up with is actually something that it could work in either public or a private setting, but probably best in a private setting. And so I suggested talking to the kids as you're talking to them and interacting with them. Ask the kids if they can think of something in the sky that looks like a bridge. And the answer I'm thinking of is a rainbow, and then that can lead to a discussion about how the very first rainbow ever came to be and the story of Noah's Ark. And so that's just one way I thought that we could integrate faith into the story, into this block building center, and be able to share with the kids about the promise that Jesus made after he flooded the earth and saved Noah and all the animals. This could lead to different activities within the center. Maybe once we start talking about animals on Noah's Ark, the kids might want to build an ark or even put 2 of each animal on their bridge. This could take us in lots of different directions. And so that is kind of the breakdown of how I created this block center pretty quickly. And so if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them for you. And again, if you visit these pages in the text 335 to 338, you can see an in-depth description of how this bridge building center came to be in an actual classroom. And also you'll see a web of different ideas that the kids had about bridge building that led to bridge building being a theme in that classroom. And so you can check that out. And again, there is a blank lesson plan provided for you so that you can actually just save this to your computer, save it under a different name, and you can just type in the information there. So that is how you create a center's lesson plan. And you'll also be creating a lesson plan for the activity that you actually do with preschoolers in your preschool experience. And it looks very similar to this, but instead of creating a center, you're going to create an activity. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask.